And happy Thursday and start of the NFL season to the world out there. Gentlemen, happy football 2020.
Are we here? Is this real?
I don't know. This could all be like some crazy computer simulation, a dream. But football's here. We're back. We're online. And had a little bit of a snafu yesterday, but we're able to regroup. We're coming back. We won't stop. We're here. We're ready to talk. And football is back. But you guys
don't call it a comeback.
Well, it has to be shut down before you can come back. And I guess for us that was a comeback. The NFL, I don't know if I'd call it a comeback yet. They never really went anywhere. But they played a game, a meaningful game. There's actual real life football that NFL fans and football fans could actually watch and see. And it went live today. It was kind of weird.
It was good to see. For maybe not being the greatest game of all time, it was just nice to see in 4K professional football athletes going at it like they are meant to do.
I wanna take some time before we get to it. We usually do shout-outs at the end, but I want to do a shout-out to Andy Reid for wearing his mask, even though it looked like he would going through the car wash. I don't know how he saw anything under that thing, but as the game progressed, it just got foggier and foggier and foggier, and they didn't have any clips of him taking it off or wiping it down. He was just, plowing through it. So credit to Andy Reid for showing that you can wear a mask in all kinds of adversity. So well done, sir.
It was perfect because it made it so that you couldn't read the calls he was making.
Right.
He didn't have to hold up the damn card up to his mouth. It was just foggy.
He's probably telling Patrick Mahomes, like, I can't see anything. Just pick a play, whatever.
Just throw it, Pat. Just throw it.
Just chuck it.
Yeah.
Chuck it football.
What's interesting is that game started pretty slow, and the Chiefs basically just took over. And then Houston, I know a lot of people make fun of Bill O'Brien down in Houston not having a GM, not making the best trades 3 years in a row. But that team just, I don't know, it's one game, but that team did not look like a great team.
It's funny because I came away with not exactly the opposite, but the last week has made me sort of reevaluate the trade. Like David Johnson today looked okay. He was fine. They got him. Hopkins signed that giant, crazy, huge contract, which I think the Texans weren't going to want to have to pay.
Sure.
But I thought, and you know what? Like the Clowney deal doesn't look as bad for them now as it did then. Does it? Oh, that was, yeah. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, we mocked him, but today, looking back, I mean, the team today was an amazing team. They need a wide receiver to step up.
Right.
Will Fuller's going to have to be not just the man, but he's going to have to be like a bigger man.
Right.
But I thought actually looking back after today's game, I was like, Bill O'Brien's maybe not as dumb as we thought he was.
Well, here's the thing, though. I agree with you the fact that, they tried to maximize value, but with that maximization of value, they haven't gotten anything in return. They don't
David
seem
Johnson looks pretty good to me.
That's a running back. Running backs are not wide receivers in the current day NFL. And I understand, like, David, I thought he had a great game. He played really well, but when they were down 3 scores, they can't continue to run the ball. That's why in this current NFL, guys like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, they have their uses, but they're not people that are going to help you come back from a loss because they're limited in functionality. So
I don't know. We had that argument last year. I mean, like, they can't help you in the comeback, but they can help you never have to make the comeback to begin with.
Sure, and
I think also, like, if you look at how many wide receivers have 1,000 yards every year, I mean, like, there's wide receivers that can get 1,000 yards. They say, like, oh, well, running backs are not special anymore. But you know what? Like, 1,000-yard wide receivers are a dime a dozen now as well.
I don't disagree with that, but I would say when I was watching that offense, all of their passes, they took a few shot deeps, but they didn't connect on any of them. Everything was underneath. you know. And at that point, when you're up 3 scores, Kansas City's willing to trade yards for clock, right? I don't know if Kansas City was ever in jeopardy of losing that game when they were up on that third score.
I agree, quarter. But I mean, there was no exhibition games, there was no OTAs. It's a different offense. I mean, like let's give the Texans. I mean, the Kansas City Chiefs had the benefit of a bit more continuity with their receivers and things. You know, Cooks.
Brandon Cooks.
Cooks, yeah, is his connection with Deshaun Watson may get better. You know, David Johnson may run some more wheel routes for 20 yards, not 5. I mean, let's give the Texans a little bit of it's early in the year, man, and it's been a weird offseason. So I'm going to give them a little bit of leeway right now.
I think that's fair to say. I would say that they have a lot to overcome before I would say that they're going to be a strong contender in a very strong AFC. Even in their own division. Whereas the Chiefs, I'm not really sure who's going to contend in that division other than the Chiefs. The West looks like it's pretty much theirs for the taking.
Yeah. They own the West for the next 3 or 4 years, don't they?
Yeah. So, you know, credit to the Chiefs for winning their home game, which is what every, you know, Super Bowl
their home game.
But it was definitely a weird game with a lot of the montage and the video. It would be interesting to see if that carries over into the weekend on all the other regular NFL games. If like that's something they're going to try and like do, because I felt like the Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth weren't like super into talking about it, which I don't know if it's their place because they're supposed to be talking about the game. But there was just so much leading up to it. I felt like Mike Tirico, Tony Dungy, and Rodney Harrison in the pregame, they talked about it really heavily through experience and talking about the player perspective. But once the game happened, it definitely like flipped a switch.
I didn't watch any of the pregame, so I can't really comment on that. But
I don't have access to the pregame.
I feel like Collinsworth in particular tried to do his best to sound comfortable talking about it, but ultimately didn't say very much. So
I was impressed that Collinsworth actually said, look, I stand with the guys. I agree with the guys. Like he like Zeb said, he didn't expand on it much. He didn't talk about it, whatever much, but he said point blank that he's on the players, you know, he's on that side. He's on the I don't know what you call it, social justice side right now. And I think I don't think he could have taken that stand last year. I
get the feeling that the league has, I want to almost say mandated that opinion. Like they've decided this is the route they're going to go. And I kind of feel like people are expected to fall in line, but we'll see how that works out the rest of the year.
I definitely agree that at the very least, the mandate is, you know what, opinions have to be allowed to be heard now. You can't keep demonizing somebody. If you know, I think there's some recognition that last year or 2 years or 3 years ago when people were taking a knee and people were going, oh, you know, that's not the right place for protest. But then this year, there's been a lot more heavy, you know, real protests and that have turned into riots in a few cases and so on. And some people are coming down on that and saying you can't do that. So it's hard to say, like, well, if that's the wrong kind of rioting or the wrong kind of protesting, then I don't know. You can't turn around and say even just taking a knee, you know. If you're saying that's the wrong kind, then you turn around and say somebody even just taking a knee is also the wrong kind. You're starting to really come close to saying, like, we won't tolerate no dissent in society.
Right.
I didn't say that very well, I'm sorry, but I think you get what I'm trying to say.
No, you made your point.
I definitely agree with you. And I think the NFL, whether they are making it an official mandate, they're definitely putting their thumb on the scale and saying, like, look, we're making this a point. We're allowing our players to express themselves in a very, very specific way. We'll see how wide of a scope they'll allow, but you know, you have to start somewhere. I think credit the NFL for understanding how important it is for their players and finally deciding that this was something that they could support. You could definitely argue the timing of everything. I know that seeing images of Colin Kaepernick in these presentations, I feel is a little distasteful when the NFL has pretty much done the bare minimum to try and like recognize what he kind of started. And there's definitely questions that could be raised about, how effective Colin Kaepernick was, but you cannot argue what he stood for and what that cost him. So we'll see. We'll see what happens on Sunday when more games are being played, what happens on Monday night and Sunday nights. And
Dallas Cowboys, I would think, are the real litmus test, right? How is Jerry Jones going to handle it? How much leeway is Jerry Jones going to give his players? That's going to be the real interesting thing to watch, I think.
I think that's a good test because that's definitely more of an extreme. Not in the sense it's extreme like thought process, but that is kind of like if you can get Jerry Jones of the Cowboys to make a stance or a decision that aligns itself with what a majority of the players are asking the NFL to do and to represent, that would be a big movement. But I definitely would be concerned if that's what we were going to see.
The cynic in me thinks that if Jerry Jones is on board, it's a positive thing no matter what, but it's mitigated by the fact that it'll lead me to believe that some committee of the NFL ownership has basically made a business decision and said they've done the analysis and it's a close one, but letting pro players do this for every team is going to make a more positive impact on our pocketbooks, right?
Yeah, and even though that's a cynical approach, I feel like people saying like, well, look, at least if we're going to do this, we're going to make money off of doing that. I don't necessarily have like the hugest qualms with that because even if it's for the wrong reasons, because it's just purely monetary based, it's still supporting what I feel a majority of the public support, and especially what a vast majority of your players that are your product support and are trying to represent. So I think it'll be interesting. It's going to be something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on also with the games and stuff. And it'll be fun to watch. But final comments about the season opener with the Chiefs and the Texans.
It was a higher quality play. It wasn't like stellar, amazing, oh my God, that changed my life kind of game, but it was not nearly as sloppy as I expected it to be. It was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
It wasn't different. It wasn't like, the offense was notably ahead of the defenses because of lack of practice, or the defense is notably ahead. I thought it looked fine. It looked like a normal early season game. In fact, I would guess that even maybe the referees have been told, let's lay off of some of the penalties right now.
Possibly. I think that's
there were a couple of times of the game, but that they were in there the end of the first half. But I felt like just in general, like whether it's because of flow of game they want to protect or it was because of lack of practice and training camp, I felt like the refs have been told, be a little bit light on the flags right now. No?
I definitely got that sense too, that they definitely allowed the game to just be played and they didn't really try and like slow things down with process and penalties and like questioning. They just kind of let the game flow, and I think that kept it kept me very focused on the game because stuff was constantly happening, like snap after snap after snap, as opposed to like, oh, let's wait 3 minutes to figure out whether or not this is a flag or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was better than I expected, and I was just happy to watch football because I don't want to ignore what's happening in the world, but I'll take my 30 seconds of watching something I like.
I'll take a break here and there.
Yeah.
This is the Hawkscast podcast. With me, as always, is Zeb and Ross, and I'm Sam. We're very happy to be talking about upcoming Seahawks football. The Chiefs started their title defense, and the Seahawks are traveling to Atlanta to face another bird team, the Falcons. This year is definitely going to be a test to the sport and its ability to bring us together or potentially kind of push some people away. And we're going to talk about pushing people away first here, Zeb, with our first topic. And topic number 1 is, did the Seahawks fail the offseason by not signing a premier pass rusher? What are your thoughts?
I can't say that they did at this point, because obviously it depends on what happens on the field this season. I think looking at what happened with the Clowney going back to last year with the Clowney trade, and then the inability or decision to not get him locked into a long-term deal, and then not bringing in like a Griffin or being able to trade for Yannick or something like that. It feels like I can see how that it feels like a failure, but we did make some really big moves in the defensive backfield, and we did make some moves in the pass rush area. So if everything works out and we've improved, then it doesn't feel like a failure to me. But just looking at the numbers and that kind of thing and the stuff that happened and what we lost out on, I can definitely see it feeling like a failure to some people.
Ross, are you in the failure category or
no? I'm in the exact opposite. Like, yeah, I couldn't disagree more, to be honest. And I'm like, it's the hill I'm dying on this week, I guess. Like, if you, yeah, they clearly still wanted Clowney, so they failed to get Clowney. That's true. But Clowney was 3 sacks last year. Period. And no. He didn't open it up for other people. Oh, well, he just makes things happen. No, because the best, our leading sack person was 4.5 sacks. So it wasn't like Clowney was getting triple teams, so he was opening up for other people. Like, when we first got Clowney, we knew already he's not like a pass rush specialist and whatever. And I watched a bunch of film, and I had said on a thing, like, he only wins if it happens to be in a situation where, like, he can get a straight shot. If you scheme him into sacks. That's the only type of sack he gets. But so Clowney's outside of the question, in my opinion. Like, he's outside of, he's a dynamic player that makes things happen. Like, but there's a couple of games last year we lose without him. So this isn't anything against Clowney. He's a great player. He's hard to evaluate with money in today's NFL, but that's beside the question. The question is pass rush. We brought in. Sorry, just a second. I just lost the math. We brought in 21.5 sacks. If we brought in one player who had 21.5 sacks last year, how much would that cost us?
Bajillion.
That would be probably 20-ish, I think, 20 million.
Right? If we had brought in one player who had 15.5 sacks last year, that would be probably 15 to 20 million as well, right?
Yeah, definitely in that range.
So instead, you bring in one guy who got 8.5 sacks, part-time playing, because they let a rookie take his job later on, it wasn't because he was doing bad. He had 8.5 sacks in half a season, but then they brought in they let the rookie pass rush specialist take over his job. So he had 8.5, and then we bring in Bruce Irvin. Sorry, that wasn't Bruce Irvin. Then we bring in the other guy. He's got 7.
Benson.
Benson
Mayowa.
So those two add up to 15.5 sacks, correct?
Correct.
And because it's divided by the 2 people, now you can rotate, right? So they're always fresh, right?
Right.
And because their sacks are like half as much, 8 sacks people are worth way less. So you pay way less for your pass rush. So we brought in equivalent of a guy who's always going to be fresh for 15.5 sacks. But people are mad because it's not an all-star with the big name with one big number. But doesn't it make more sense to pay less and have a guy always be fresh and who's probably, if that guy had started the whole time last year, probably would have been at 13, 14. But thank God they replaced him, so we get him for cheap. We get Bruce Irvin for cheap. And then we bring in a safety who transforms the pass rush because he himself is a blitz specialist. He had 6 sacks from the safety position last year. Plus, he's better in coverage than what we've had. Plus, he's and by having better coverage, that, of course, means quarterbacks have to hold the ball longer, which leads to more sacks. We bring in a rookie linebacker that everybody thinks, because his film is about playing middle linebacker in college and being a vacuum cleaner of tackles. But, in fact, as I think Matty Brown as well brought up, and I brought up after this thing, he's got the speed, he's got the ability. He can pass rush as well, and they're going to. He's going to be the 3rd down weak side linebacker, which means he's going to blitz sometimes too. He's going to have 4 to 6 sacks as well. So we addressed it. We addressed it by having a better pass coverage. We have a better cornerback, Dunbar. We've got a better nickelback, presumably.
Presumably.
Seems that way.
and we've got a better blitzing weak side linebacker who's going to be on the field. We've got better Leos. So I don't get the failure because we didn't bring in one guy with a big name. We did it a much better way. We did Moneyball. We created an.
I think that's kind of like the concept, and we've talked about Moneyball and how the Seahawks build a roster all the time throughout the years. Talk about how they apply it in a lot of different positions and how, as much as they don't want to, quarterback's like the one position that they're willing to kind of break the Moneyball rule because it's just impossible to find anything close to a comparable replacement. Instead of paying $15 million for 1 year of Jadeveon Clowney and hoping that he as a premier pass rusher would get you double-digit sacks, you're going to spend less money to sign two guys in Irvin and Mayoa. That's the thing that people, I feel like, don't find sexy. Like, that's not like title grabbing.
Exactly.
It's never exciting to sign Michael Bennett's and Cliff Avrils of the world until they perform and they get you those 7 to 10 sacks a year because you're keeping them rotating, you're keeping them fresh. You know, I feel like, to your point, Ross, there's the people that feel that this is a failure. They don't look at it and like they don't look at it well. And what I mean by that is Seattle offered him a contract. You know, John Schneider and Pete Carroll said, we've been talking to Clowney the whole time. Clowney and reporters had said that the Seahawks have made offers and it just didn't work out for them. You know, they offered him a bigger contract at the beginning than what they could offer him at the end. And because of that, people feel like that's some kind of failure. Seattle can't force these players, especially a free agent, to sign just because they offer him a contract. He's an unrestricted free agent, and this is the first time he's been that in his career. I think he's banking on himself to have a great year because he signed with the Titans and his old defensive coordinator. But if he ends up with 5 sacks, I don't think anyone's going to be like, wow, we really, really missed the ball on that one, because Clowney plays ugly. He doesn't get the super sexy stats. He does the dirty work, which in theory should help, but we were still a really pretty bad defense last year. I think we're going to be better this year. So I'm with you. I think it's hard to say the Seahawks failed because in order to say they failed, you have to look at the history of what happened from when the offseason started until where we are now. They definitely made attempts, and just because they couldn't do everything they wanted, that doesn't mean that they failed. That just means the market didn't fall into their lap.
Yeah, I mean, it's the other two players anyway. I mean, like, people probably bring up the Yannick trade, and you know, we already gave up a lot of draft capital. I don't think they were interested in losing more draft capital, no matter what it was going to be. Because it's not just like the one player. Like, our second rounder could be a third, a fourth, and a fifth by the time it comes around, right?
Right.
It gives the ability to play ball.
Here's a quick question. If Clowney signs earlier in the offseason, they don't make a trade for Jamal Adams. We are running the year with Bradley McDougall as their safety, correct?
Do we know that? I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's directly. I think they've always wanted to upgrade safety for the last few years.
I don't know if they would be as willing to make that trade, and I think you are correct in that they wouldn't ever shut it down. But I feel like that's not something they would push.
After the trade, they were still pushing for Clowney, so I don't think it was. It's easy to look like it's connected. I don't know. It's possible. I mean, we're never gonna get a bug in Don Schneider's office, unfortunately.
But that's always those series. Like, in order for you to look at the whole season, off season, you have to look at all the steps that took place, because the way the Seahawks build a roster, it's not multiple individual decisions. It's like, how does this decision lead into this position?
Sure.
How does this trade? How does this acquisition impact this depth here? There's always moving parts, and that's what I feel like people are not looking at.
I would be really, really curious to see what the offer to Clowney was post trade. Like, once he rejected the initial offer, and once time went on for a long time, they clearly offered him less. I would be interested in knowing how much less.
So
I almost felt like that after the trade, we brought in Jamal. was sort of like a hey Clowney, see what we're doing here? Come be part of this. We can be we can be the great defense again.
I thought it was going to be. I mean, it's a misreading Clowney because I don't. It's funny. The very, very first day we traded for Clowney last year, I think September 1st last year, I had this weird feeling in my stomach because this very, very first interview, he was like, he was saying good things about Seattle, but he was also saying, no bones about it, he wants to get paid.
Yeah.
He wants all the money and he wants all of it right now. So I never thought he was going to re-sign. I just didn't know he was going to screw us over also by not only did he not re-sign with us, he waited too long to sign, so we don't get the compensatory pick. So
that's the only thing that bugs me about this entire thing is that they are not going to get a compensatory pick.
Yeah, I always assumed they would. Like literally when we talked about this during the podcast last year, I was like, I'm okay with it just because he's going to walk, but we're going to get a second. It's going to be so awesome.
Yeah.
And we can get that. And it's exactly, and what we thought was right, what we thought was true is exactly right. Like you said, Sam, he went and signed where he's going to get stats. Their system of defense puts him in a position to get more sacks than Seattle's does, and that's if he came back to Seattle. I think he kind of was interested, but if he had come back to Seattle, he was going to end up with, if healthy, 6 sacks or 5 sacks, not 9.5. So that's going to affect his future income, and that's how basically he decides things.
Yeah.
He just wants to get paid. I don't think he's chasing rings. I don't think he's chasing anything except for dollars.
Which hey, you know what? To his, in his defense, he was one of those rookies that was drafted where they were restricted in their contract, and this is the first time he's been able to be a free agent. So I think he made some poor business decisions because if it was just about getting paid, he had a contract from other teams like Cleveland of all places, where he was going to get a 3-year, $17 million deal. Seattle was offering him initially about a $50 million contract. He signs for $12 million with Tennessee, with $3 million in incentives. New Orleans tried to make a big push, but they had some crazy shenanigans where they were going to have Cleveland sign him, and then they were going to trade a second to Cleveland for his rights, but that's like an NBA trade. So the NFL, that's not how they run. So
it's also I just lost my train of thought.
That's a good segue for us because we're going to push ahead and we're going to go to topic number 2.
One last thing I was going to say, when you see yourself as a premier player and you're unsigned into September and you fire your agent, that's a sign that probably the offseason didn't go how you planned, right?
I think that's fair, but whether he's making that decision or his agent,
well, he fired his agent, right?
He did fire his agent, so.
And for people listening, we are actually, I know my pronunciation of the word is sometimes weird. I'm saying agent, not people from Asia.
Well, Ross, I'm gonna let you continue this conversation here because we're going to talk about topic number 2. And Ross, will you give this season a pass, regardless of what happens? So there's a lot of unknowns that are going to happen. We played 1 game. There's 100 more to be played in this NFL season. What is your expectation, and is it changed because there's a lot of unknowns that could impact when a season officially is over, whether it ends with the Super Bowl champion or if it ends before that? How are you approaching this season?
We didn't get exhibition games, we didn't get OTAs, and it's a weird year, but nobody did. Nobody got exhibition games. It's all the same standard conditions for everybody. So this year counts, man. Counts just as much as any other year. Yeah, there's not as much stuff and it's a weird year, but assuming we get 16 games, if it goes 2 games or 3 games, that's different. But if we get 16 games, I don't really care that the offseason was unorthodox. It's my expectation is the same. Always compete. Super Bowl or bust. Let's go. Yeah, no.
Zeb, what about you? Without knowing where the season's going to end or if it finishes, what's your process? What's your thought process?
Right now I feel pretty much the same way. All the teams it's a level playing field. The plan is to play a full season and have playoffs, new playoffs, and all that. So is assuming everything goes according to plan and we play through the season completely that way, it's just like any other season to me. If weird things start to happen, which as I think we've seen this year, they're going to, one way or another, those expectations could potentially be changed. If we have, God forbid, a COVID outbreak in our locker room and we lose starting players for, weeks, then obviously the situation becomes different. And at that point, it's hard to expect the team to complete the season at a high level. But, that remains to be seen. Until that point, as of right now, I feel like this is a normal football season.
Quick question for you, Zeb.
Yep.
Not to get too political. We try not to be too political. But number one threat to this season being a full season is A, COVID-19, or B, political upheaval following November 3rd's election?
At this point, I would have to say political upheaval.
I would say it's political upheaval, but I don't think it'll be related to the election. I think it will be related to social injustice, because that's what the players have been advocating for. And I think that is the biggest impact to the season over the election results or COVID-19.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody earlier about this, and I feel like if there's, God forbid, another police killing of a black person during the season, that one of the ones that makes the headlines and makes the news, chances are that teams, especially teams in the city where it happens, or teams like the Seahawks who have already hinted at their willingness to sit out games if need be, I think that will probably happen.
I think that's why this season is so weird. We've never had an NFL year where we've talked about, here is multiple scenarios which could end the season, invalidate, or bring into question the validity of an NFL season, right? Like, we've had our Super Bowl 40 where we questioned, wow, did we get a fair shot based upon how quickly the refs were willing to penalize one of the least penalized teams in the Super Bowl? That's a question that always Seahawks fans will take and talk about and discuss ad nauseum. Some are more maybe resolved on that. Some are obviously still very heated, and rightfully so. But this NFL year is going to be very, very interesting if we get into those kind of scenarios. To both your points, Zeb and Ross, I hope the season finishes. But here's something that I've never had to do. I have a fantasy league that I've run with a lot of my buddies from high school. This is our 17th year that we've had this competition. And I had to create contingencies. I had to say, well, if we play less than this many fantasy games, this is what we're going to do. If we play more than 8 games and we don't get a full playoff, like we don't get to finish week 16, here's what we're going to do. I've never had to think about that as a commissioner for my league, for my fantasy league. And that in itself, because for me, fantasy football is such a big component of football and why I enjoy watching other teams, that is something that I think will really, really impact not only, obviously, my enjoyment of the game and fantasy football, but what is in store for the season. So yeah, I'm not gonna discount any if anything happens where, like, everything's on a pretty level playing field right now. But all those unknowns definitely give me a minute to kind of think about, man, what would that mean if there was something that caused players to strike and not play a game? What would that mean if the wildfires in certain states, like we're seeing in Washington or Oregon or California or other places, what would that mean if teams aren't able to play? And that's where this season is such a weird thing. So yeah, I'm not going to give anything a pass, but it's never been something that I've had to think about, which I think is in of itself super weird, super 2020 of it all.
Yeah. I agree.
Any other thoughts on on we'll get into predictions about the season and stuff, but anything else on topic number 2 here?
For all intents and purposes, I hope we have a rather generally uneventful football season that takes us through January to the Super Bowl, and nothing crazy happens between now and then.
Fingers crossed.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to topic number 3. Topic number 3, Zeb, is the Hawks Cast Corner, and I want to know which NFC West fan base is in for the worst surprise this year. Which NFC West team fan base is going to get 2020'd really hard?
I want with all of my heart to say the San Francisco 49ers, because of that would just bring me joy, and it's been a while since I've had joy. But I feel like it could just as easily be us. So I don't want to jinx anything, but I don't know. I don't know what kind of surprises are really in store. I think the knowledgeable fans, have a pretty good grasp on how good their teams are at this point without having the preseason and everything to kind of judge it. But I feel like knowledgeable Seahawks fans know that things aren't necessarily perfect going into this season, and that there's a possibility that we could be, a middle of the road type team. I think the 49ers fans probably have the greatest expectations, being the representative of the NFC in the Super Bowl last year, and the ones that I've talked to pretty much expect to stay on that level. So I think it's likely that if there is going to be a surprise and a team doesn't perform the way their fans are expecting them to, they'd be the ones.
Ross, what about you? What NFC West fan base is in for a bad surprise?
I think Arizona. I think some of the trades they made and the progress you expect from your quarterback in the second year, I think it'd be really easy right now if you're a Cardinals fan. I mean, there's like 6 of them, but I mean, those guys, those 6 guys, it's really easy to fool yourself into thinking like you're serious contenders this year, right? You brought in Hopkins, arguably best receiver in the NFL. I don't agree, but arguable. You can make the case.
Top 3, top 5.
The fact that you can argue if they're in that discussion, I think holds water. So yeah,
he's in the discussion. I mean, and Murray's an exciting guy, and Drake was dynamic when he came over last year, and there's all these things. Like if you want to believe it, you can believe it, right? So. And if you're that kind of guy, you're probably still going, "Oh, we still got Fitzgerald. He's going to mentor these guys, and whatever." But I don't see it happening. I don't think Murray. I think Murray's got a cap. I don't think he's ever going to be a Russell Wilson. I think he's going to be a good player, a fun player to watch. I just don't think he's going to be like the kind of guy I guess you'd ever to the Super Bowl. I think he's more like a Michael Vick than Russell Wilson, to be honest.
I just need Murray to put up fantasy stats. I don't care if he wins or not.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I'm sure he'll do that, and a lot of people will be happy. I don't think Hopkins is going to be a 100 catch guy in Arizona with that style offense. I don't think Drake is a guy designed for 16 games use out of how they used him last year. I don't think there's a lot of stuff that could build up expectations if you're a Cardinals fan, but a lot of stuff that's not going to fall into place as far as I can see. So I think there's a lot of Cardinal fans that are going to be really frustrated this year. They look like an 8-8 team, but I think the hardcore in that of those 6 guys thinks that they're probably like 11-5 or 12-4 even. They certainly are tempted to think they've passed us and are battling with the 49ers, right? But I don't think they are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that all of us have kind of taken a very different approach. I'm gonna echo the sentiment. I'm not gonna take the Niners. I think that obviously they have the highest ceiling, and that kind of gives them the chance to be like the biggest disappointment as well. Because if you lose in a Super Bowl, the expectation is you go back and you win a Super Bowl the following year, which is very rare. That hasn't happened in recent history. A lot of times,
when has that happened? Do we know?
I'm trying to think of when it was, and it wasn't the Broncos because the Broncos didn't return to the Super Bowl until 2 years later. So I can't remember the last time a Super Bowl loser came back and won a Super Bowl the following year. Off the top of my head, I can't think of one because it's so rare for teams even to make back-to-back Super Bowls. So that's the thing. But actually, I'm going to pick the Rams. The Rams are 2 years removed from a Super Bowl appearance. They just signed Jalen Ramsey to a monster contract. And I don't know how. I don't know how they have any money when they've already given out big contracts to Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey. They gave a contract to Goff, and they gave a contract to Ted Gurley. Obviously, Gurley's not on the team anymore. But yeah, I'm not really sure if that team can still be that great because they've lost so much. They're not the team from 3 years ago, and I don't know if Goff is any better. Sean McVay obviously has a lot of talent. He can scheme very well for that offense, but I just don't know if they have the personnel. So I think that the Rams are in for a big disappointment because we've talked about this before on the past podcast. We are kind of saying that the Cardinals are probably going to be better than the Rams this year. And I think a lot of Rams fans expect them to all of a sudden contend with the Niners for the top team in the NFC West, and I just don't think that's in the cards. As talented as Aaron Donald is on the defense, if you run away from him, that helps, and I just don't think it's enough for them.
Makes sense. Yeah. The 1972 Dolphins are the only team to ever win a Super Bowl after losing it the year before.
Wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And is that the team that went undefeated?
Yeah,
it is.
They lost in the Super Bowl, went undefeated the following year. That's crazy.
That's revenge, is what that is.
Yeah, for real, right?
The ultimate football revenge. So yeah, basically what we're saying is it's not going to happen.
I mean, there's a lot more cases of the Super Bowl hangover taking effect. Like you lose it, and then next year goes bad for you. I don't think that's going to happen. But a lot of teams, they go bad the next year because to get that far, they had to sort of do bad things to the salary cap, and they went all in on that year. But I don't think the 49ers really did that. They just built a solid team. So I think they're still solid. I think they're slightly worse. Everybody says they're bad. I think they're slightly worse. I think losing Buckner, you're assuming you've replaced it with some of these rookies, but we know rookies you don't know.
Right.
So they're on the field. You can't just assume they're going to do what they were in college.
I don't think they're special good by any means. I think the 49ers made the Super Bowl last year basically because of a lack of competition. They were good, but they weren't if you were to list, the great teams that made the Super Bowl, they're not on that list. They were good, but they're not like world beaters.
Like the thing that the NFL does so well is that your schedule is so important. And the Niners had a terrible schedule last year where they only had to play the worst teams. Those 2 additional games you play where it's the 3rd or 4th team in the division, that's a huge difference because teams can't just bounce back and be great. They're playing a number 1 team this year across the board. That's going to be a challenge for them. So to your point, Zeb, I don't know if they're better. I still think they're a really good team. I would still give them the edge to win the West because they have such a good team and it's still relatively young. But yeah, to your point, that's something that people don't consider. There are teams that are going to be gunning for them because they're not a surprise anymore. No one's going to be surprised when they come to play. So I agree with you on that point.
We agree.
All right. Let's move on to topic number 4. I want to talk about the upcoming battle with the Atlanta Falcons. So, Ross, topic number 4. Which bird team comes out ahead on this one? Do you know anything about the Atlanta Falcons?
I do. I know a couple things. They've got a good offense, and they got a decent defense, and they've got our my favorite defensive coordinator as their head coach. But we're gonna win because we're more talented than they are at the end of the day. I mean, we've closed the gap on the receivers, and we've got a better. I mean, Matt Ryan's good. Old school style, just throw the ball around, awesome quarterback. I like that, but he's no Russell Wilson. And I'm really excited about our defensive backs, and that's what you need when you're playing with Atlanta. You need to be solid in the secondary, especially the safety. So, they replaced their tight end, got another good one, but again, it's more like a hypothetical good. Like they brought in what's his name, Hayden Hurst. And Birdfinger wanted him badly for Seattle last year. And he's supposed to be really good, but we haven't seen it yet, right? I mean, a season of it. So I don't know. Like, Atlanta's good. I'm not going to put them down. And they're one of my kind of second-tier favorite teams going back to Steve Bartowski. But we got this. We're just a more talented team. We've got a pass rush issue, but that's okay.
Zeb, what about you? Which Bird team comes out ahead?
Whichever one scores the most points.
Well, hey, shut it down. We're done here. That's end all be all.
That's the key point.
Yeah, dude. I don't know, man. Like, I think we can beat them. Like, we should be able to beat them. I feel like like Ross said, we're more talented. We seem to have trouble with them. For whatever reason, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I can't really look at when we've won and when we've lost against them, but I feel like they're always tougher than I expect them to be.
So here's the interesting thing about the Seattle and the Falcons. So we have not beaten the Falcons in the playoffs in the last 2 attempts, and in the last three home games, or last 3 regular season games, Seattle has won. So
there was the Golden Tate touchdown game. Was it last year? Did we play him last year where we were way ahead and then we let them come back?
Yeah, last year we were up 24 points and then they came back within a score because they had 400, almost 500 yards of offense.
Yeah.
But we still scored more points than they did, so. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a game like this, like the game we saw tonight with the Chiefs and the Texans, I think without having a preseason and a regular training camp, talent probably wins out, since you're not really able to game plan the way you normally would. So I think based on that alone and the fact that I'm always wrong about everything, I think we probably come out ahead.
I think that's fair. Better to trust your gut than anything else.
Right.
As long as you keep the criteria in your head and you don't tell anyone what that criteria is, you can't be wrong.
Bingo. Shout out to Lon.
I think that obviously we're Seahawks fans and we think the Seahawks are going to do well in this game. I think if you try to objectively say, where are we deficient against the Falcons and where are they deficient against us, there's more question marks on our offensive line and our defensive line. But I think we're better in our linebacker core and our secondary. We're better in our running game and our receivers. Just due to the fact that I feel like we have more weapons as opposed to the Falcons, which obviously have a very, very, very good receiver in Julio Jones. I think Seattle has a better quarterback in Russell Wilson than Matt Ryan. So I think there's enough advantages that we have if we were trying to look at it even our rose-colored tinted way than the Falcons do. So I definitely give us an advantage. The gamblers out there, they've given Seattle an advantage as well. We are a 1.5 point favorite on the road. So
nice. Championship.
Yeah, road to wherever the Super Bowl is this year. That's what this is.
Where is the Super Bowl this year?
I don't know. Kind of imagine we weren't going to have one, so I didn't look it up.
I don't think it's going to be in Clackamas County.
Yeah, shout out to Clackamas. Stay safe.
I don't know if there's going to be a Clackamas after this is all said and done. Jesus.
Super Bowl this year is in Tampa.
Ooh, Tampa's always a good Super Bowl.
Birdfinger chiming in saying Tampa as well. And also credit to anyone that says Tampa and not Tampa Bay, because the city is Tampa, the Bay is very specific to the location, but it has nothing to do with the actual name of the city. So credit to Birdfinger.
Which is why the Buccaneers have such a weird name, right? Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Why is your team named after the body of water? Green Bay is the name of the town, you idiots.
Right. Maybe it's a pride thing.
Team after the water. You don't call it like Tokyo Bay Giants.
What if we were the Salish Sea Seahawks?
Right? Puget Sound Seahawks. What?
If you were to say one thing that you are concerned about in this game, one thing that could make you feel as if we don't have an advantage on Sunday, what would it be about the Seahawks? Where are we the most deficient and most vulnerable?
They have two really good wide receivers, Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones.
They do.
If one of them just runs, you can see it happening. And Julio's heard us before. If Dunbar or if Flowers, whoever ends up starting, if they can't step up and if they can't handle, real Ridley because the thing is, Julio Jones as well. He's going to play from everywhere. He'll play from X. He'll play from Y. He'll play from the slot. Everybody's got to be on the game, and you can just see Julio taking over games against us sometimes. And you can, or if they focus, if they roll coverage and they stick on him, you got to be prepared for Ridley as well. And to be honest, even their third wide receiver, Gage, is that right? Gage, he's he's capable of putting up 100 yards on you as well, a couple of touchdowns. So if we're not on our game on the defensive secondary, you can just see things going bad.
Yeah, I would say new guys in important roles on defense that haven't really had a chance to play together yet. Last I heard, Dunbar was starting opposite Griffin. I don't know if that's fact or not, but that's what I read. So between
the
him,
depth chart I saw or written there.
Yeah, I saw that too. That was earlier in the week. They had him.
Flowers or Dunbar.
Right. Okay. So say it is Dunbar, and then we got Adams, who obviously is one of the best in the league at his position, and you expect him to be able to perform regardless. But chemistry is a thing, and now we got Marquise Blair, who is shown to be apparently really emerging as a fantastic player at nickel. But again, all these different moving pieces, these new roles for people. You can't necessarily expect him to come out week one with no real experience, no practice in a real game, and just perform 100%. So that would, that's something that's probably worth keeping an eye on.
Blair in the slot versus Julio Jones, is a little scary to me.
Right.
Blair doesn't really have the skill set that would have automatically suggested him for nickel anyway. But I don't know. It's a little scary.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, I would say the thing that, if I had to pinpoint one thing that would make me cautious about the game, is the historical slowness of the Seahawks. They're not known to just go on a rampage and just put up points after points after points. They're almost methodical to a fault. A lot of the rope-a-dope idea that we're going to keep testing you and until we're really behind, we're not going to really unleash anything. I think that is the thing that I would say could potentially hurt us, because if we're not in a close game, that means that it's less control for the Seahawks in the way that they want to play, and it forces them out of their comfort zone, and maybe Dan Quinn can exploit that. So that would be my one concern.
Fair. It's a fair concern.
Yeah. Final thoughts on the Atlanta Falcons.
Let's just go down there and whoop them.
Just score 45 points right away.
Yeah. Yeah, let's drop a Kenny Easley on them.
By halftime.
That's
not by halftime. Then I'd be scared that they were going to come back.
And those are our topics. So we're going to jump into some predictions. Ross, I'm going to hit you up with the first prediction. What is the final score between the Seahawks and the Falcons?
31-27.
Zeb, what's your score?
45-17.
Ooh, that's a lot of points.
Ooh.
I don't know if the Seahawks are as high flying as the Chiefs are, so I'm going to go a little bit more conservative. I'm going to say 24-14. Ross, who is going to be the game MVP? Ross is really thinking about it.
Thinking very hardly.
It's going to sound weird, but I'm going to go with Josh Gordon.
Josh Gordon, who's not even active?
Oh, yeah, he'll be active.
Oh, wow.
Is he active?
He's not active.
No.
He's not even reinstated, but that would be
He's
great.
just going to be a real good cheerleader from home?
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, to be honest, I don't have a good feel, for who. I was thinking Chris Carson, but I think that's too obvious. I don't know. We're just go generic and go Russell Wilson.
That's fair.
I think with some of the pass, like not designed runs, but I think with some of the pass rush situation going on and some of our offensive line issues, I think he's going to run for more yards this year than we were expecting. I think we kind of expect every year for him to run fewer yards, but I think this year actually goes up again.
Interesting.
I see that coming because I think I suspect we're going to try to pass more this year. I really do think so because of the offseason and things like that, and where the talent has fallen and things like that. Talent is not fallen, isn't going down. Is like just where we happen to have our best guys, and there's some subtle indications that we're going to pass more. But I think against certain teams, we're going to have a hard time with the rush, and so Russell's going to have to just take off again.
I could see that. Zeb, who's going to be your game MVP?
DK Metcalf, who's going to show Julio Jones who the new big wide receiver in town is.
I would like to see that. I'm gonna say the game MVP. Let's just give it to the new guy. Let's give it to Jamal Adams. He does good. Something big. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's a big hit, big sack, big interception. Ooh, a pick six, that would be big. Who is going to be the fantasy football star of this game?
Julio Jones.
Reluctantly.
10 catches, 145 yards, 2 touchdowns. It's not going to be good.
Damn.
Yeah. We know who Ross has on his fantasy roster.
I don't actually. I usually have him in a lot. I usually invest him a lot, but he went for too much money this year. I didn't go.
You wanted him though. That's what's clear.
Wanted him. I seriously wanted him.
Zeb, what about you? Who's going to be your fantasy football star in this game?
DK Metcalf.
DK Metcalf. I think that's pretty fair to say. I can't go.
Can I say real quick? Sorry to interrupt, but I feel a little bit sorry for Tyler Lockett because he had more yards and he had a better year last year, but he doesn't have quite the charisma. He doesn't have quite like the physique, of course. He just doesn't have like quite the presence. Like everybody's all over DK Metcalf, but Tyler Lockett's super still legit, and he's getting overlooked now. No offense to you, Zeb. I don't think you're trying to do that. I'm just saying. It's one thing I even noticed during all my fantasy football drafts. DK Metcalf goes higher. He goes faster. In auction drafts, he goes for more money. Tyler Lockett is still our number one receiver until he loses that title.
Until this season.
Tyler Lockett, he's 65 best player in the NFL, top 100.
Dude,
DK Metcalf 81. So
he had an amazing 2018.
Yeah, there's definitely
that's hard to live up to.
There's definitely that. I get what you're saying, Ross. Like Tyler Lockett's definitely kind of like under the radar to a lot of people.
He doesn't have like the mystique, right?
Right, but I think that's the thing when you don't have the freak size of DK Metcalf. I mean, DK Metcalf went from a rookie that was falling in the draft, quote unquote, to now the 81 best player in the NFL in the top 100. After 1 year. So
yeah.
It's going to be interesting. My game MVP, I'm going to go with Chris Carson. I think he wants to establish himself. He wants a contract. This is a year that he's going to, if he can stay healthy, try and set the world on fire. We're going to push a little bit more. Ross, where are we going to see more points scored, in the first half or the second half?
Second half, because you can't win in the first half.
Where are we going to see our points scored? First half or second half?
First half.
First half?
Yeah. We're going to start hot.
I'm going to be with Ross. I think we score all our points in the second half. It's just because we're going to be slow, and that's just what it is.
Accept it. Embrace it.
I know, reluctantly. Who's going to produce the first big play? Is it the offense or the defense, Ross? The long pause, the thinking.
Defense.
Defense going to have the first big play. Zeb?
Offense.
Offense. I'm going to go with the defense. I think that the way that the Seahawks are going to play, they're just going to have more opportunities, which also means that they're going to be able to make the first big play. Who scores first? Is it going to be from a running back, a wide receiver, the tight end, defense, or special teams, Ross?
Sorry, say that again.
Who scores first? Running backs, wide receivers, a tight end, the defense, or special teams?
Wide receiver.
Okay.
Yep. Wide receiver.
I'm giving my love to Chris Carson and say the running backs are going to score first. And over under, Ross, are we going to see 3.5 COVID absences leading up to this weekend? Not just this game, but across the NFL.
Under.
Zeb.
Under.
Yeah, I think the NFL's done a pretty good job. I kind of put this a little bit higher than anticipated, but I'm going to say under as well.
COVID's over.
Oh, shut up. It is if you have enough money, right? Like the NFL is spending. If you have a crazy huge amount of money to invest on it, it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
You can tell everybody all day and find out how close they are to people and immediately trace and isolate. Then yeah, it actually kind of is. But unfortunately, we can't afford to do that for 330 million people over there and 120 million people over here. So, but you guys are so much worse than us.
Yeah. And the last prediction of the evening: over under Seahawks roster moves before the game 1.5.
Before the game, over.
Where roster moves or trades?
Roster moves. So demoting, signing, move up from the.
You're allowed to do some special stuff this year for COVID.
Yeah, we could easily move some couple of guys around. I'll say over.
I'm going to say over as well. I think they're going to take advantage of this new promoting players from the practice squad out of the blue. So I'm going to go over. I'm going to see more than practice squad players getting moved around this year.
Yeah.
Did they add Ursua to the practice squad?
They did add him back. He got added within the day. It was like 24 hours because he cleared waivers in that time. But yes, he got added back to the practice squad.
Okay, so he still has the chance to be the next
Doug Baldwin?
Yeah.
That's a lot of wishful thinking from people, but he was drafted.
We moved back into the draft for him.
That's right, we did.
I don't think it's that they don't like him. I think this has been a weird year, and they're looking for complementary players in this very, very specific sense.
I don't know. You would think that they cut him for what's his name?
Penny Hart.
Right. So Penny Hart doesn't know the playbook better. He shouldn't anyway. Should he?
Well, he was in the team with the offseason, so he's not like a player from another team.
Right. So, like, presumably Ursua has had an extra year with the playbook over him. So
right. So
just weird year.
I would think that it means that Penny Hart has more value as a special teams player, which is why he got on the roster and Ursua did not.
True. It's funny because I'm one of the people who often says that. Like when you're looking at roster cutdowns, remember when you're talking about fifth and fourth receivers, it's not about the receiving, it's about the special teams. But then every time I see the cuts, I forget to think that way.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, Ursua knows the playbook. Give him a chance, coach. Put him in.
Yeah, but I mean, there's a lot of players in front of him, and I think that's why he got cut and then brought back to the practice squad.
Yeah, we'll see. It's a weird year.
And gentlemen, that is our podcast for the evening. Shout-outs.
Yeah, I got a shout out to the Oregon police for begging the public to stop calling false reports blaming Antifa for the wildfires.
Wow, that's a first.
Wait, how did you pronounce that? I've only ever read that word.
Antifa.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah, that's how we say it.
Huh.
That's how those of us who are registered members of the club say it.
That's how George Soros documents the pronunciation.
Yeah.
It's not.
I've only ever read the word. I didn't know. Oh, that was interesting. Okay, I learned something new.
Ross, any shout-outs?
All of the fire department people fighting the fires over there, and including the fire services from overseas that are helping, because unfortunately the U.S. president has cut off aid to certain states. So actually foreign countries are helping places like California and Oregon. So.
And apparently all of our best helicopters are in Afghanistan or something right now, so they can't even help.
Well,
That's
Afghanistan, weird. Afghanistan lives matter.
True.
Well, that took a turn. Special shout out to first responders from whatever country you're in and wherever you're helping. We appreciate you. Check out the Hawkscast podcast on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast. I'm excited for the NFL. It's so close. Seahawks football is so close. We're going to actually see them play. Shout out to Zevin Ross, to Birdfinger on the chat. We are the Hawkscast Podcast, and we wish you a Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.